everybody, it's time to create a panorama. During our recent Colorado trip, we were lucky enough to have the national parks not get closed, so we got to go to the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and you can see a shot of it right here. Now what I did was I shot 6 frames, so let's look at it from right to left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now this was shot on my PhotoPro E6H Gimbal Head, which allows me to rotate around the nodal point, so I know everything's going to stitch together perfectly. But before we do that, here's the procedure. Pick one of the images. I like to pick something kind of in the center where the subject is, and do your adjustments. So let's go into basic, and we look at the histogram, and the histogram's looking pretty good. We got really close to the white, and the sky looks blown out. But according to the histogram up here, it's not. It's just very bright. So let's cut to the chase. I'm going to bring the highlights all the way down. Now we're starting to see the sky. I'm also going to open up the shadows a little bit, but not too much, because we're going to end up darkening some of those. I'm going to add some texture, some clarity, and it is getting hazy off in here. So I'm going to add a little dehaze. And then let's add some vibrance, which is cooler and desaturated colors like blues or very pale tans. And then overall saturation will bring that up. And yes, we're going to want to fine tune this, but that's okay. So now I'm going to, since I have all 6 images selected, you can see, I'm going to click on synchronize and just say check all. Just do everything I just did and apply it to all those images. So now as we scroll back and forth, you can see that's looking a lot better. So now we need to stitch these things together. And there's a couple of options when you do a panoramic merge in Lightroom. And since this one had some stuff very close to my feet, it might be a different choice than usual. So let's go up to Photo, Photo Merge, Panorama. So here's all the images brought into Lightroom's panoramic merge. And you can see we've got some weirdness going on. And there are 3 choices up here: spherical, cylindrical, perspective. Now, most of the times I choose cylindrical because spherical has a tendency to compress vertically. But if we do cylindrical, let's see what happens. See, it got kind of weird. It overemphasizes stuff by my feet. Perspective is probably going to make it even weirder. Yeah, obviously that's not the answer. So cylindrical is looking a little too weird. Let's take a look at spherical. And spherical is compressed. You know what? We're going to start out with cylindrical, and we're going to have to override some things. Now, I mentioned this was shot on a gimbal head, yet all of these distortions and these scalloping are actually being created by Lightroom because it's assuming I'm rotating on a curve, not actually having a gimbal with a nodal point rotation. So I'm going to use the boundary warp to straighten this thing out. So let's just click on here and drag it all the way over, and that's looking a lot better. Now, the foreground is still a little bit compressed to my eye. It's a little too powerful. So we're going to end up adjusting this a little bit in Lightroom, but let's go ahead. But that looks pretty good, so let's hit merge. All right, so let's get rid of the left panel and give ourselves a little more real estate. And that's actually looking pretty good, but it's still distorted vertically a little bit. It's a little bit too tall. So let's see if we can go into transform and fix it. And first thing I'm going to do is bring the scale down a little bit so we have some room to move. And then go to the aspect ratio. See, if I drag it right, I can make it skinnier. If I drag it left, I can spread it out. And I think that's a pretty close approximation of reality. So let's bring the scale up so we can go right to the edge there. And that looks a heck of a lot better. We can go ahead and do the constrained crop. And I can live with that. In fact, I'm probably going to crop off a little bit of the bottom because I want the viewer to come here. So I'm going to cut to the chase. Oh, and look what happened. We ended up, our default crop was the original. So let's come back over to here and get our entire image back left to right. I'm also going to take off a little bit off the bottom. And I don't think I need quite all of this on the left because this big mass here is drawing the eye. Let's kind of minimize that. And actually that ends up having the benefit of putting the river, this is the Gunnison River down here, on one of our power grids. Oh, that's looking great. So what else do we want to do? Where does the eye go? Well, since the sun was lighting all the rocks in front of me, they got a little bit too light, so they're a little bit too powerful in the scene. Also have some haze back in here, and the shadows in the bottom of the canyon are very dark as they are, hence the name. But I want to change where the viewer looks, and we're going to do some light painting to do that. Let's get a brush, which is the K key, or we can come to the masking panel here and click on brush. But you can see K is the shortcut. Learn that. K, M, Shift M. You're going to use those all the time, and I'm going to use them right now. So I've got K. Do I want auto mask? Yeah, let's go ahead and start with that. And what auto mask does is it only paints the mask in the areas that match what's directly underneath the crosshair. So I think something like that. And what's the problem? Well, the highlights are too bright. So let's scroll down, bring down the highlights. In fact, we're going to bring down the whole exposure. Oh yeah, that looks a heck of a lot better already. So we can just hit enter on that. What else do we need to do? Is the sky too bright? Yeah, I think the highlights of the clouds are a little too bright. So let's create new mask and select the sky. And let's scroll down and bring down the highlights there. That's looking a little better. In fact, I'm going to bring the contrast down too. Even though it was a contrasty day, I'm also going to push it over to the blue a little bit more and add a little magenta too. That will add a little bit of warmth to it. Okay, that's looking better. Let's hit enter on that. Now let's go to the middle of the image, which is where everything's happening. K again. This time we've got this area back here that's going a little bit hazy. Let's click in there. Yes, there was some haze, but I want to cut through it a bit. So we scroll down to dehaze, which will do it just what it says. So I'm going to make it darker and then brighten it up a little bit. Cut through the haze and then open it a little bit. There we go. Now the river, we've got the river here. This area is one of the areas to highlight. I also think maybe over here is a little too dark, so hit K again. We're going to open up this area, and where else? Maybe down in here as well. Let's bring the exposure of these areas up a little bit. I'm going to bring the highlights down, but I want to bring up the shadows. Looking good. All right, K again. Now this time we're going to turn off auto mask. I just want to kind of get a swath of color through here. I want to bring up the saturation. Because again, my goal is to get the viewer to look there. So I'm going to add a bunch of saturation in there. And I'm also going to bring down the highlights. Even though there's some sparkling in the water there. Again, I'm trying to help the viewer get to this part of the image. And as I see this, I think I want this area here a little darker again. Guess what? Hit K again. So let's paint in here. And in fact, I'm even going to go down to the corners of the image. And let's bring the exposure down some more. So I want to add a vignette. Let's go down to Effects, and I'm going to do my customary -12 vignette. Again, this is the area I want everybody to go to. And this is a big place, so it needs a big print. So I want to add a little bit more emphasis to the middle. Emphasis, I can say that. And I'm going to use Shift M. So I just hit Shift M, and that gives me a radial gradient. And this is the area I want to affect. So with that chosen, and as it fades out to the 0, it's okay if it hits the sky a little bit, or if that bothers you, I can just compress it a little. So what do I want to do here? I want to bring up the exposure a little bit because I'm going to end up darkening it. Let's go ahead and add some clarity. I should get a lot of clarity. We're going to add a little bit of dehaze, just a little bit. We'll add some texture. And then I'm going to bring down the highlights again a little bit more. In fact, let's bring down the whites. There we go. And I think we might be done. In fact, I'm going to make a virtual copy of this, which is Command apostrophe. And I'm going to reset it. So there's where we started out with our raw stitch of the files. It's distorted vertically because of how the program put it together. But we took that and turned it into that. That's really a feel of what the place really looks like. And that's the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. So remember, if you're using a panoramic head, everything's going to line up straight. So you have to override Lightroom's assumption that you're hand holding the thing. If you're hand holding, you're going to want to do an auto crop. But if you have a panoramic head, this is what's going to do it. You ever get a chance, you're out, find yourself in southwestern Colorado, Black Canyon of the Gunnison in Montrose, Colorado is an awe-inspiring place. I just don't want it to get too crowded, so shh, don't tell too many people. So there you go, a cool panoramic in Lightroom. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope to see you online again soon. Till next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.